see how XML can help. Here's a solution using XML. Every time the customer sends a request to the provider, use the XML format to specify the name of the product. Using XML in this way just requires minor changes to the Martian 2.0 system. And the provider also needs to be prepared to receive and send data using XML format. This way all the communication between the customer and the provider will be in XML. And since they're speaking the same language, they will understand each other. Everybody's happy. Move on to the next slide. This is a picture of my friend Kitty. He's going to be helping me later. Now let's talk about the interpreter. Imagine 3 different people who saw this. The first person would just see many lines and black circles. The second person may recognize this as music, but not know what it sounds like. And the third person may see this and instantly start singing. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Da da da. Da 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 da. Okay, I'm not Pavarotti. But that was fun. Well, in this case, the first 2 people couldn't interpret these symbols. But the third person was a musician, and was the right interpreter for this musical code. Here we have some HTML code inside Notepad. When Notepad opens a HTML document, it doesn't have the ability to do an interpretation of HTML. That is why Notepad just shows us the code, nothing more. But what happens when we give this same code to a browser? A browser is the right program to use to do an interpretation of HTML code. Hopefully you have a better understanding of what an interpreter does in the world of computers. Come with me to the next slide. Hello. Here we have a computer connected to the internet. The internet is represented by the cloud. And on this side we have a web server. Did I say web server? Sorry, I didn't explain what a web server is, so let me take a couple of minutes to do that. The web pages you see in your browser live on a web server somewhere. The web server hosts the pages in a public address or URL for them. This URL provides a way for all the computers connected to internet to find this website. There are special kinds of web servers called DNS servers. The DNS servers are the ones who know the relationship between a domain name like www.microsoft.com and the particular web server that hosts these pages. You can think of DNS servers as a lookup service. For example, say someone is looking for the page snippage HTML on some domain. Like this, www.microsoft.com/snippage.html. The DNS server will redirect the request to the specific web server that hosts the pages for that domain. And then the web server will respond to the request by serving up the page. Oh, the computer who requested it. But now let's get back to the lesson. I apologize for the distraction. Let me recreate the original slide for you. When the client computer requests a static web page, like the HTML page of this example, the web server receives the request and sends the page directly to the requester without doing anything to the page. Because it is not its job to do an interpretation of the HTML, the page goes to the client computer that requested it, and the browser does the HTML interpretation to show the formatted page. In this case, the web server just serves the requested pages. That is why we call these kind of plain HTML pages static, because the content of the pages doesn't change. Play explain, and the browser does all the interpretation. Now let's see what happens with a dynamic web page. A dynamic web page contains code that the web server needs to execute before sending the response back to the client. The extension of the requested file indicates whether it is a static or dynamic web page. In this example, we used HTML to indicate a static HTML page, but now I will use a dynamic page named SPX. The extension ASPX indicates it is a dynamic page. This means that the web server will analyze and execute the code inside SPX before sending the response to the client. The code inside a dynamic web page could do many things. For example, it could connect to a data store to retrieve some information. In this case, the code would need to provide a mechanism or instructions to create the connection to the data store, and then get the data requested. For example, the dynamic web page may look up the 4 most popular musicians in the world. Take a look. Finally, the server gets the data requested and needs to do something with it. Hooray! Because the original page, SPX, contains code with instructions for the server needs to dynamically create a new HTML page for the client requester computer that shows the data requested so the client's browser can do the HTML interpretation. That's why we call this a dynamic web page. To the end user, there's really no difference between my page HTML and my page ASPX. They both show HTML interpreted by the browser, but the process that the web server goes through to serve these 2 pages is very different. Now it's almost time to talk about ASP.NET. Just one more slide. Yes, HTML pages are static. These are the HTML extensions. Microsoft ASP.NET pages have the ASPX extension. We covered a lot of material in this chapter. Congratulations for making it through. Now you need to run the second video for chapter 2, where we will learn about ASP.NET. Bye.